All right. Samuel, 2 Samuel 9, verse 1. 2 Samuel 9, verse 1. And David said, Is there yet any that is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? And there was of the house of Saul a servant whose name was Ziba. And when they had called unto David, the king said unto him, Art thou Ziba? He said, Thy servant is he. And the king said, Is there not yet any of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of Elohim unto him? Ziba said unto the king, Jonathan has yet a son, which is lame on his feet. The king said unto him, Where is he? Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, in Lodabar. Lodabar is the city. Then the king David sent and fetched him out of the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, from Lodabar. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, was come unto David, he fell on his face and did reverence. And David said, Mephibosheth, and he answered, Behold thy servant. David said unto him, Fear not, for I will surely show thee kindness for Jonathan thy father's sake, and will restore thee all the land of Saul thy father, and thou shalt eat bread at my table continually. And he bowed himself and said, What is thy servant, that thou should look upon such a dead dog as I am? Then the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said unto him, I have given unto thy master's son all that pertains to Saul and all his house. Thou therefore and thy sons and thy servants shall till the land for him, and thou shalt bring in the fruits, that thy master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, thy master's son, shall eat bread always at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then said Ziba unto the king, According to all that my lord the king has commanded his servant, so shall thy servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son, whose name was Micah, and all that dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants unto Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he did eat continually at the king's table, and was lame on both his feet. Many people live in a state of loneliness. People who are by themselves, out of the mainstream of society, with no social activity or friendships outside of themselves. There are great many others who live right in the middle of life's hustle and bustle, that find themselves alone and dislocated and misunderstood, both physically and psychologically. Many people have been and will be alone. From the thousands of orphans to the megastars surrounded by thousands, from the homeless to the struggling single mother, people are alone, distressed, depressed, forgotten. They're alone. Now, Lodabar was such a place. Its city, its very meaning is not having or pastureless. It was a town full of forgotten people, including Mephibosheth, son of David's best friend Jonathan, who was the son of King Saul. In Lodabar, we would find the lost, unskilled, uneducated cast-outs from society, those whom people would scorn at, those that we would pass by and pay no attention to, those who would be just another statistic on a government report, those who would be some PhD candidate dissertation study. Lodabar was full of estranged folks with no family, no jobs, poverty-stricken, and barely getting by day to day. Lodabar was full of runaways, street people, all with a story, all with a broken past, such as modern-day LA with its overpopulated streets that has been described by some as a million stories in the naked city. It's like to modern-day New York, with its millions of living on the streets, thousands below poverty level. It's like the modern-day Miami, where thousands are drug addicts and drug dealers and cartel members. Like modern-day Pittsburgh, with its hundreds of homeless, thousands of addicts, thousands of children with no home. Murder, crime, disease. Like modern-day Washington with its crowded women's shelters, abandoned youth, poorly educated, low job establishments, radical racial problems where everybody has a broken story to tell, some misfortune to overcome. We live in Lodabar. We know someone who lives in Lodabar. We walk around. We drive around and ignore Lodabar. Inhabitants of Lodabar are not there of their own fault. Mephibosheth was not in Lodabar because of himself or something that he had done. We're told that he was crippled in both of his feet. He was crippled. His crippled situation was the result of a debilitating consequence placed upon him in his youth, and he was not born crippled. And 2 Samuel 4 verse 4 tells us that Mephibosheth was under the care of a nurse while his father Jonathan was in battle, and when the word came that Jonathan and Saul were killed, the nurse grabbed Mephibosheth to run, but dropped him, and thus injuring both of his feet for life. He was only about 5 years old when this happened, and then had to spend his days being cared for from time to time by somebody else, or living off handouts of a few in a detestable, forgotten place called Lodabar. It wasn't his fault his father died. It wasn't his fault that nurse dropped him. It wasn't his fault that there was no doctor who could repair his situation. It was not his fault. It's not your fault you were molested as a child. It's not your fault that you were raped. It's not abused verbally or physically. It's not your fault you had no father. It's not your fault you had no mother. It's not your fault that you had to raise yourself or raise your parents instead of them raising you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault you were raised in poverty or on welfare and handouts. It's not your fault no one ever gave you guidance, provided you with a good education, or inspired you, or poured life into you, built up some confidence in you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault that they closed the business down, or cut the people back. It's not your fault that how you were raised, or how you were talked to, or how you were prejudiced against. It's not your fault that you have lived or now live in the state or city of Lodabar. We are always quick to assume that people who are in the situations worse than our own have had to do something wrong to get that way. I've even heard people say that they don't have enough faith. Must have sinned and they're being punished. They're being punished, but God, please. That's no way. We have received some unexpected turmoil that at the time there seemed to be no way out. There seemed to be no way out of, or no one to help. And Lodabar was all there was. A place to wallow, a place to share in everyone else's pain, a place you wouldn't be judged. It's a Lodabar. A place that no one wants to enter, that no one wants to help us out, a place that is overlooked, shunned off and ignored. Nobody wants to go to the ghetto unless it's to get some drugs. Nobody wants to go to the homeless shelter unless it's to make themselves feel better, doing their little part to help out. Nobody wants to go out to the poverty-stricken country areas unless it is to buy some vegetables on the side of the road. Nobody comes to Lodabar. It's like that person who asks you, how are you doing? And when you start to tell them about your troubles, they tune you out and they walk away. They aren't concerned about how you feel or what you're going through, because most people just don't care. But I heard Yeshua say in Matthew 11, verse 28, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For I am meek and lowly in heart. You shall find rest unto your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You can cast all of your cares upon Yeshua because he cares for you. Know that Yeshua is able to pick you up from where you are and set you high upon a solid rock. Proverbs 3 verse 5, "Trust in Yahweh with all thy heart, and lean not unto your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil." Joseph knew what it was like to go from the pit to the palace, from the palace to prison, from the prison to the castle. The children of Israel knew what it was like to go from bondage of slavery to the splendor of the promised land. But most people would rather stay where they have become comfortable in Lodabar. Lodabar doesn't always inhabit just the poor. It's not always a physical place, because there are many people who are disenfranchised right in the center of middle and upper class America. More than we might think. People are messed up on the inside and looking like everything is all right on the surface, and the one sitting next to you just might fit that mold. Ask your neighbor, are they all right today? Because you see, somebody might have been abused as a child or molested. Somebody might be battling homosexuality or drug addiction or alcohol or adultery or acute depression or something that has affected their mind. Something that causes them to not sleep at night. Something that has crippled them from being who Yahweh intended them to be. Something that keeps them miserable, unhappy, frustrated, always moody, full of anger or jealousy, or something that has them living in a psychological prison that seems to have no way of escape. They can't talk to you about it because they are ashamed or embarrassed and worried that you might not understand and talk about them. People like to put each other down, as if everybody in the church is perfect and is supposed to be perfect. Whereas the church is supposed to be the hospital where people come to get fixed up, not beat up. Have you ever realized that you have probably sat next to somebody that got beat up before they came to that church? Somebody that is afraid to go home because their own child might be there and they're afraid of their own child? Somebody that can't get over being abused as a child? Somebody that is abusing their child? Somebody that is on Ritalin or whatever drug? Don't you know that the church is full of people from Lodabar and living in Lodabar? Paul said in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 27, "But Yahweh has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and Yahweh has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and base things of the world which are despised. Yea, Yahweh chosen, and things which are not, to bring not things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. But of him are you and Messiah Yeshua, who of Yahweh is made unto us wisdom, and righteousness, and sanctification, and redemption. That, according as it is written, he that glories, let him glory in the Master." We are afraid. People are afraid to come up out of Lodabar, afraid to ask for some help. People are worried that they will get put down, talked about, insulted. Their fear, they're more than anything else, keeps us down. This fear keeps us down. Isn't it strange that we are afraid of? Isn't it strange what we're afraid of? I mean, we all fear rejection. We fear failure. We fear other people. But we don't fear Yahweh. Even though Yeshua said in Matthew 10, verse 28, "Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. You better fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." We will hide our faith so we don't offend people. Steal because we're too ashamed to ask. We will lie to save embarrassment. Well, King David says, don't be afraid. You see, in those days, it was customary and necessary that when one king was overthrown, his entire family was killed off to keep from a future uprising. Now Mephibosheth had been hiding out for who knows how long, and he was discovered and thought it was time to die. But to his dismay, he was being offered a place at the king's table, a new home, a new land, a new life. But he didn't think he deserved what he was being offered. Why, a dead dog like me? Mephibosheth replied to the king's offer was just like most people. Why somebody like me? I'm nothing. I come from nothing. At least that's what my family has been telling me all my life. I will never amount to nothing. You ever hear that? I'm crippled. I can't work. Can't even take care of myself, let alone somebody else. Nobody has ever cared about me. Most people don't even know I exist. Why do you want to do something for somebody like me? A dead dog. Truth be told, none of us deserve what Yahweh has given us or anything that he wants to give us. We should have died a long time ago. A car crash or a truck accident, drugs or crime or illness, should have touched us and ended our life. But what we need to know today is that the king, not David, Yeshua, our king, wants to bring everybody up out of Lodabar and have us eating at his table. He wants to heal the broken, lift up the downtrodden, set free the addict, give hope to the hopeless, give joy to the joyless, give life to the lifeless, elevate the depressed, build up the one with no confidence, open doors for the jobless, provide shelter for the shelterless, be a husband to one who has no man, and be a wife to the one who has no woman. He wants everybody to come up out of whatever is holding them down. Walk in the newness of life that can only come through him. Come with all your dysfunctions, disabilities, inadequacy, heartaches, burdens, and pains, and he will bear them all. Romans 5, verse 6. For when we were yet without strength, in due time Messiah died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet peradventure for a good man some would even dare to die. But Yahweh commended his love towards us, that in that while we were yet sinners, Messiah died for us. Much more than being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to Yahweh by the death of his Son, much more, being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. You may feel like you don't have the strength and the courage, but in Isaiah 40, verse 29, he gives power to the faint, and to them that have no might, he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon Yahweh shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Don't you know that there is a balm in Gilead that can soothe your hurting soul? His name is Yeshua. Yeshua, the King of kings, the Master of masters. He wants to restore you the years that the locusts have been eaten. He will enable you to go into the enemy's camp and take back what he stole from you. Yahweh has said, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the desert and streams in the wastelands. Revelation 21 verse 4 says, Yahweh shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. 21 verse 5, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for those words are true and faithful. Isaiah 65:16, that he who blesses himself in the earth shall bless himself in the Elohim of truth. He that swears in the earth shall swear by the Elohim of truth, because the former troubles are forgotten, because they are hid from my eyes. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into your mind. And he has made a way for you, if you are willing to accept what Yeshua has already done for you. Isaiah 53 verse 5 says, But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Yeshua proclaimed in Luke 4, verse 17, And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of Yahweh is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel of the poor, to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of Yahweh. Do you know what chapter and verse that was? Isaiah 61, verse 1. The Spirit of Yahweh Elohim is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prisons to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh, and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all that mourn. Yeshua's ministry was about bringing people out of Lodabar, healing, setting free, giving sight, opening doors, lifting up, regardless of who they were, regardless of where they have been, regardless of their race, regardless of what they have been told, regardless of how much they have done wrong, regardless of any stipulation that society would consider hopeless and helpless. Yeshua said, "Come unto me." Matthew 11:28. "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Acts 2:38. Then Peter said unto them, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Yeshua Messiah, for the remissions of sin, and you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promises unto you and to your children and to all that are far off, even as many as Yahweh our Elohim shall call." Yeah, we bless.